Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff.
Alex.
As always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please join our community by subscribing to us on the socials. Our handle on all platforms is at N2E Fantasy. We are also available on all major podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy. Alex, what do we have on today's show?
On this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, we are recapping Week 2 action. So we will go game by game and talk about anything we think of as of note, and we'll also get started with just the general league news, the big bullet items. So, Jeff, we've got a lot of injury news to discuss. Why don't you get us kickstarted with the top one here?
This season has not been fun with injuries. And just before week 2, 49ers running back Christian McCaffrey goes on IR with a calf/Achilles injury and will miss at least 4 games. And he'll probably miss 6 or 7 games. Alex, how do you think people feel about that they drafted McCaffrey 101 here?
I think people who drafted him 101 are upset. I think most people knew that there was an injury risk in the past, and it seems like that's come back around after 4 years of being pretty healthy. But that just means that he should be healthy for a playoff run if you make it to the playoffs. Hopefully, you're able to grab Jordan Mason or somebody else off the waivers to fill in the short term. But yeah, no one wants their star running back to be out for multiple weeks.
Absolutely. And Alex, you can take a victory lap on this one because you always thought the injury was more severe than Andy Reid was letting on. But the Chiefs wide receiver Marquise Hollywood Brown goes on IR with a shoulder injury that required surgery, and he will now miss the entire regular season.
I don't know if I'll take a victory lap, but that it's not good to lose one of your weapons that you were hoping would contribute right away. So just like with McCaffrey, they don't want Marquise Brown to not work out, and now he's not going to be there. So they're going to have to rely on Rice, which is your guy. They're going to have to rely on Worthy, who is the first round rookie that they drafted. Other familiar faces like Juju Smith-Schuster and some of the other guys they have there. It doesn't look like it's Kelsey right now, but that may change as the season goes on. But yeah, not a good week for the Chiefs because they also, we'll talk more about this probably when we talk about the matchup. They also lost Isaiah Pacheco, who's now on IR for at least 8 weeks, probably, maybe longer.
Yeah, they're saying 6 to 8, but it's a fibula break, and that to me is a bone that you need to run. So it's one of those things that probably need to fully be healed. But in his place, they have brought to the practice squad running back Kareem Hunt. Do you think that'll be a direct replacement, or you think they're just throwing darts against the wall at this point and seeing what sticks?
Throwing darts against the wall because it's going to be Kareem Hunt's going to be third fiddle right now. So I would say Carson Steele, the main rusher, and I would say Samaje Perine, the third down back, maybe gets mixed in more. And then I think Kareem Hunt is going to take a little bit for him to get in playing shape, and he could eat into the other guy's time, but he's not very fast anymore. He is an older running back, so we'll see how effective he is.
Absolutely. I just feel like one can replace what Pacheco does, how he runs, his ability to catch. Like I think this is going to turn the team into telegraphing and make them one-dimensional.
It has that possibility, but being one-dimensional just means Patrick Mahomes has to throw to all these other guys, so maybe it'll make Kelsey more interesting.
Absolutely. So we will see what that means, but if Carson Steele's in there and he's not the receiving back, you'll know that it'll be a run, or they're going to pass with Mahomes to one of the receivers, and you're not going to need to cover Carson Steele. If Samaje Perine's in there, they're not going to run, and they might throw to the right. So it's going to telegraph it a little bit more. I know it's not as cut and dry as what I said. Just dumbed it down to a very basic level there.
One thing the Chiefs are creative when it comes to their offense, so I'm sure they can address it at some point.
Absolutely. I just don't know how you I don't know how you replace a Pacheco like for the next 6 to 8 weeks. And hopefully he can come back and hopefully he's fine and everything goes as planned.
Well, my default answer for replacing a running back is someone needs to sign Frank Gore Jr. off of the Bills practice squad because he would be a one-for-one replacement, exactly what Pacheco is.
We'll see what they do, but it does not seem that anyone's going to go that way. But we all know that you have your favorites for running backs, and the Packers place one of your favorite running backs on IR, Marshawn Lloyd. He'll miss the next 4 games with an ankle injury. I know he had the hamstring injury in preseason. So now this is a second injury that is going to cost him 4 games. You do remember before the regular season that there were rumors that he was put on IR with the hamstring injury. Now he is put on IR with the ankle injury. So his injuries are starting to pile up. Josh Jacobs' stock at an all-time high right now.
Josh Jacobs' volume stock is at an all-time high because no other running back on this roster can stay healthy. But you have to think at some point all of that workload and stress will eventually come and bite Jacobs as well. So we'll see if he can handle it and see how long he has to handle it.
Don't you wish that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
But we can move on to the Bengals. Wide receiver Jamar Chase will discontinue long-term contract talk during the season. So, I mean, does that mean, Jeff, that if they offered him all the money that he wanted right now, he would just say no?
I don't know. They would have to blow him away for him to consider an offer. I think he's just done talking about it. They know what his baseline is, so if they came in at him, I think he's done. I think he's done negotiating. I think they know his bottom line, and either they meet it or there's no more talks to be had right now. I think that's kind of how I read that. But he did take a $50 million insurance policy out on himself, just in case something happens to him this year. He is going to be paid one way or the other. Speaking of guys that got paid in the offseason, though, I know we skipped this one a little bit here, but Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa gets another game-ending concussion, and his career now seems in jeopardy, and he's been placed on IR and will miss at least the next 4 weeks.
You're gonna just talk about it when we got to the Thursday night matchup, but I think his career's over. I think he should retire. But again, more on the player safety side, he can pursue football, but at some point, what team is going to want to take a significant risk on a player that's had 4 concussions now, and this one looks really bad? I don't know.
Absolutely.
I don't know what the Dolphins do here. Even if Tua wants to come back, would the Dolphins let him come back?
I think they leave it up to Tua and his doctors, and if he's all cleared, like I don't know how you keep him off the field, especially with their options right now at quarterback with Skylar Thompson, and now they scooped Snoop Huntley, Tyler Snoop Huntley, off of the Ravens practice squad and signed him to their active roster. So I don't know who's going to be starting for the Dolphins. I'm assuming it's going to be Skylar Thompson because he knows the playbook. He did compete in that one playoff game against the Bills, but he did not look good against the Bills this week, which we can hop right into the week 2 recap here where the Bills did beat the Dolphins, and we both got that one right. Alex, where do the Dolphins go from here without Tua at quarterback? Like, do they just tank to the bottom, or is there some savior that I'm missing?
I don't know if they go all the way to the bottom, but they're now in a situation where they can be somewhat competitive, but they will probably won't make the playoffs now, in my opinion. Especially if Tua's out the entire season.
Yeah,
There's not a good pathway for them.
I think they were the first out team for me, so they were never going to make the playoffs for me, but I know they were in one of your playoff rankings, I think in your last one. But I do have another question about this game is why did Achane get 29 touches in a blowout matchup, especially when he came in questionable and they thought his workload was going to be decreased for the game?
Well, I think Mostert was out for the game, and I think Jeff Wilson got banged up in the game. And then I think Wright, I don't know if anything happened to him or not, but A-Tan might have been the only healthy running back. But if
That
that's not the
is
case,
true.
it makes no sense for him to have 29 touches. Zero
No.
sense.
And Skylar Thompson should have been back there throwing more and like I don't know. I just feel like they ran HN into the ground for no good reason in this game, especially after it was
Yeah.
out of hand. It was out of hand the minute Tua went down with that injury. Like, because if Tua led that drive for a touchdown, we're talking about a different game altogether. As soon as Tua went down, and then Thompson couldn't punch it in for the touchdown, that game was over.
But on the Bills' side, it was a little bit happier for them Surprisingly enough, it was not a Josh Allen game. He only had one total touchdown and only 139 passing yards. But James Cook had three touchdowns, and he was having himself quite a game. At one point, it looked like Dalton Kincaid might have had a concussion, but he was cleared and was allowed back into the game. But Jeff, this is another week of no Bills pass catcher really being worth playing. Is
Yeah,
this going to continue like this, or do you think this changes at some point?
I don't believe it'll continue. I think this is a game that just went off the script really quickly. Like there was no reason for the Bills to do anything potent outside that first drive in the third quarter. So I think that's why Josh Allen's stats were down because they didn't need him. But it's nice to see a James Cook game because I know there's certain people that we play in fantasy leagues with that love a good James Cook.
Yep. All right. That's pretty much for me
Yeah,
on this
I don't
game.
think there's much you could take from the Bills from that other than James Cook could have a game like this.
It's nice to see him get involved in the red zone.
Yep. I think Josh Allen's hand has caused a little bit of that though, his left hand.
Is it weaker than his right?
No, it's injured. He injured it in week
Yeah,
1.
I know.
He was questionable for week 2. He got cleared, but I think that he doesn't want to take those unnecessary hits right now if he doesn't have to. All right.
Let's move on here. The next matchup we're going to talk about is the Browns at the Jaguars, and not much to take away from this matchup either, except Jacksonville continues to struggle, and they're now 0-2. ETN didn't get much going on the ground, but he did get a touchdown. Brian Thomas Jr. was the best receiver for the Jaguars, and he only caught the ball 2 times. Jeff, what do you make of the Jaguars, and what do you think is wrong with this team?
So in this game, also Tank Bigsby left with an injury, and I know they're trying to get him more involved. They also lost Evan Ingram in a pregame workout. So in the warm-ups, they lost Evan Ingram as well. I think Brian Thomas is a quietly good wide receiver, and he might actually put up decent fantasy statistics this year. So that's something that's a pleasant surprise from this offense. But there's something not clicking with the offense. I don't know if it is Lawrence. I don't know if it's Lawrence and the receivers. We haven't really heard much from Christian Kirk this year yet, and I think that preseason injury really hurt him. And I know Lawrence has a good connection with Christian Kirk. So I don't know if that's affecting this. I really don't know. I think some teams use September as their additional preseason, and the Browns defense might actually be pretty legit and keep them in games this year. But that's only helpful when Watson's better, which he was actually better this week. And it does seem like they are moving away from Cooper. And it looks like Jerry Jeudy could be the new number 1 wide receiver in Cleveland. What are your thoughts on Cleveland?
Um, I don't know that I would say Deshaun Watson was better. He didn't turn over the ball, so I mean that's something, but 34 passing attempts and he only got 186 yards. He got no touchdowns. He did get a rushing touchdown of all things, but I still don't think Deshaun Watson is good anymore. I think that once he left the Texans, I think that was it. You can point to the shoulder injury last year and say he might be improving from that point, but Deshaun Watson being a good quarterback is gone, and I think the best you can hope for is a game manager for a quarterback. Jerry Jeudy, I don't buy that he's the number one, bona fide number one, but I don't know. I mean, maybe a couple more weeks in, we'll see, but something's going on with the connection between Watson and Amari Cooper, and I'm not a fan of Watson not being able to connect with Amari Cooper.
Cooper had a terrible drop in the game, too.
I will say, Cooper and Elijah Moore both were targeted 8 times. Jerry Jeudy only 6. So Jerry Jeudy is third as far as target share. I don't know if that means anything to you or not.
No, I think it's still shaking out, and I think there's a good chance that Amari Cooper is on the move here in the next couple of weeks, especially to a team like the Rams that need a wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, I can see Amari Cooper getting moved.
Anything else on this matchup? We both got it wrong, so that sucks.
Yeah, Jaguars terrible. Cleveland isn't that much better, but it is what it is.
Exactly. So, speaking of games that we got wrong, we both got the Indianapolis Colts versus the Green Bay Packers wrong. We both picked Indy. Green Bay did win that game. Are you ready to talk about Anthony Richardson and his 50% completion percentage, 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions through 2 weeks?
To be honest with you, we can talk about it, but this is essentially his rookie year compared to other young quarterbacks. I mean, he's kind of on par with a lot of them right now. I don't know. Quarterback play is down across the board. I will say Anthony Richardson has more yards and more touchdowns than Trevor Lawrence does in the same amount of games. And Colts offense is right smack in the middle, but whereas the Jaguars is in the 20s. So I think Anthony Richardson is going to go through growing pains, and I think he'll finish stronger than he starts, but he might have a couple more really awful looking games.
Okay. Okay. But in comparison, Willis completed 85% of his passes, but his wide receivers are unstartable until Love is back.
So
So,
Malik Willis, I think he's a third year pro.
yep, basically his rookie year.
He's already had more starts than Anthony Richardson has had. And I think that Green Bay does the best with quarterback prep. They've seemed to make seamless transitions no matter who the quarterback is. So I think that they got the maximum value out of Malik Willis. I don't know what's going on between Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen. Shane Steichen, as you pointed out, has had some serious questionable play calling, like only rushing with Jonathan Taylor 12 times despite it being effective.
Yeah.
Indianapolis is averaging over the first two games only 19 minutes of possession. So something's clearly wrong in that whole offense. Green Bay, they're going to find ways to win. And luckily for them, Indianapolis so far has the 32nd, which is last, ranked rushing defense. And Josh Jacobs was able to benefit from it. As we pointed out earlier, Marshawn Lloyd got an ankle injury in this one. Emmanuel Wilson was not useful in this either. So Josh Jacobs is going to continue to get that volume. 32 rushes, no catches this time, but with Malik Willis starting, Josh Jacobs is going to get heavy volume with those other guys out. Malik Willis, I don't think he'll be as efficient in the next game as he was in this game with 12 for 14 completions for attempts. Like you said, it's going to be hard to use these wide receivers. Maybe one of them will be useful, but we won't know which one on a weekly basis until Love's back.
Absolutely. And it was 14 total touches. So if you had the 2 catches in for Taylor, and he had 135 yards, which is insane for a running back only getting 14 touches. Wouldn't you think you would give a guy with 135 yards more touches on offense? On the inverse, Jacobs had 32 carries alone. So it just feels like night and day play calling and time of possession, and Green Bay's winning that.
Jeff, I know you probably don't really want to talk about this, but the next matchup here, Chargers at the Panthers. So the Chargers, which you like this year, 2-0, but it came at the expense of your Panthers. Panthers are now 0-2. Bryce Young, probably one of his worst games yet, has officially been benched going forward. They're going to be using Andy Dalton because this game was that bad. Herbert had a couple of nice throws in this one, and Quentin Johnston got 2 touchdowns in this matchup. So, Jeff, how much should people get carried away with Quentin Johnston?
They should go all in on him and blow all of their fab on him. I'm just kidding. But Herbert looked decent in this game. Johnson actually looked really good. Probably his best game as a pro by far. That first throw and catch was pretty ridiculous because it was an over-the-shoulder grab for a touchdown. But I do want to rewind to something you said, Bryce. What Young watch is over. He has been benched for Andy Dalton. I know last week I said I'll give him till Thanksgiving to see if he shows me something, but I guess Carolina was not as patient as I was about the quarterback there. So it does seem like Carolina will be moving in a different direction in 2025 at quarterback. I just don't know how or where.
I don't know if you watched a bunch of this game or not, but there was a point where Bryce Young was trying to talk to Deontay Johnson, and Deontay Johnson was having none of it and wouldn't talk to him at all. So, like, Bryce Young lost the team really fast.
Yeah, and the offense got better pieces around him this year, and it's not better results. So it's all kind of pointing back to Bryce Young as the culprit here.
We're going to find out next week with Andy Dalton, so we'll see. But J.K. Dobbins finally got, I think, actually equal touches to Gus Edwards. He had 17 rushes, 1 reception to Gus Edwards' 18 rushes. And J.K. Dobbins, significantly more efficient. He got 131 rushing yards and a touchdown. So, Jeff, do you think it's clear to say that he is the number one running back on this roster, or do you think it's still split?
Getting there. Very slowly but surely, but he's getting there. I don't see how anyone could watch these games and not understand that Dobbins is the better of the two running backs. The Ravens understood that previously. I think Harbaugh was always open to this possibility. I don't know what he was actually looking for with Gus Edwards. I think he was just looking for a grounder and pounder, maybe.
Yeah. I'm looking for a grounder and pounder. Gus Edwards can usually stay healthier than J.K. Dobbins has managed to this point, but when Dobbins is healthy, he's got that explosion. There's a reason why several years people have been excited about Dobbins. So,
It might be finally his season.
yeah.
All right, we both got that one right, but let's go to a game where we both got wrong, and I lost my lockup in week 2. And
Yeah.
the Ravens lost to the Raiders here, and I have a couple takeaways from this game. I know you're gonna bash Minshew here, but Minshew kind of carried the team with a 78% completion percentage to this victory because the Raiders' run game is trash. Like it is non-existent. It is just probably the worst run game in all of football right now with Zamir White and Alexander Madison running the football. Anything to add about the Minshew? Come on, I need you to bash Minshew before we move on to the Ravens side of my note.
I don't know how someone who completed 30 passes can still look so bad in the weekly matchups. I mean, he had a nice touchdown to Devontae Adams. It's just, I don't know why everything has to be so short. And I don't know why he has to take so long to throw the ball behind these players. But hey, Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers have been usable. That's something.
Yeah, would you say Brock Bowers is a top 5 tight end moving forward, or you're not ready to move him out of the top 10 into the top 5?
I mean, he might even be a top 3 right now, just with how bad tight ends have been. He might actually be a
That's
top
pretty
3.
bold. That's pretty
I
bold. Would
mean,
you take him as the third tight end?
he just got 9 receptions for almost 100 yards. And I don't know if another tight end besides maybe Isaiah Likely has had a game like that 2 weeks in.
Absolutely. And my only Ravens note from this game is it does appear that Zay Flowers is their no-brainer number one weapon that they're using.
Speaking of Zay Flowers, he liked a couple comments about the Ravens started losing when they stopped feeding Zay Flowers the ball. So we'll see if the Ravens can pepper him with targets because it seems like they have to keep him happy because if they don't, they're going to lose games. And he's going to throw a little fit, it seems like, too.
Absolutely. He's in line for a big year this year though.
He's in line for a lot of targets, that's for sure.
Yep. Let's see if he can convert that. Alex, this has been a theme this week, but the next game we also got wrong with the Saints at the Cowboys. And the Saints won in commanding fashion. But Saints, are they the contenders or pretenders of the NFC?
I mean, I know I liked them last year, and I'm always off by a year, it seems like. So they could be really good this year. They've been really good over the first 2 weeks. I lean towards hot start and cooling off later. So I think I lean towards pretender, but it could be interesting. They could be a surprise playoff team that no one was really expecting.
Absolutely.
But one thing we both really liked about this game is Kamara was featured very heavily. I think he had 41 points in half point PPR, 3 touchdowns, something like that.
Yeah. Love it. I love it. You got me smiling over here because I was a big Kamara guy. I had him as a top like 8 running back, and I know there are people out there looking at me like I was nuts, but he is officially RB1 through 2 weeks, and it's not even RB1 really that close. I think he's got a 20-point lead over Saquon Barkley, who is RB2 right now. Maybe a 10 to 20-point lead.
I think the highest that you had Kamara in your rankings was number 7, running back overall number 7,
Yeah.
which is much higher than most people had him going into the season.
Yeah, I have to definitely take a victory lap for that one. He's got a 15-point lead over Saquon Barkley right now for RB1. And I just don't see a scenario where he slows down this year, unless he gets injured, of course. Like, that would slow down anybody. But you're right. I had him at RB7 going into this year. He was RB7 in my projections. Barkley was RB8 in my projections, RB6 in my rankings. So I feel pretty good about that. I feel like there has to be a couple teams out there with Barkley and Kamara on them as their top 2 running backs, and they're just running away with their league.
Could have been me. I decided between Barkley and Gibbs, and I just wanted Gibbs more than I wanted Barkley, even though my projections had Barkley a spot ahead of Gibbs.
Personal biases, they get us every time and every year. But
Yeah, but who's to say
that's
that
okay.
Gibbs won't finish higher than Barkley at the end of the year? Barkley had that really nice first game and cooled off against the Falcons. So we'll see.
No,
But I do have
I
Kamara.
completely agree. It's still early and anything could change, but I like the way that it's starting. And I feel like this is a mulligan for the Cowboys here. They are back at home, I believe, next week, so they'll get another chance to right the ship. At home against the Ravens, who are 0-2, they're going to be kind of playing a little angry, I would assume. So that has the potential for an upset too.
I can't wait to see if we pick the same team for that matchup on the next episode.
I think we're going to have a lot of differences on the next episode.
Yeah.
But this episode, we had all the same except for one matchup, which we'll get to in a few minutes. Another one that we had the same was the Giants at the Commanders. Commanders did win that matchup, 7 field goals, was it? With their new kicker,
Yeah.
Austin Siebert.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Which we 100% predicted it would be a 7 field goal victory.
Yeah, absolutely.
We
Jones
did
looked
pick
service.
Washington and we won.
Yeah. Daniel Jones looked serviceable in this matchup. Devin Singletary looks serviceable as well, but not sure how much of accomplishment that is, considering Washington is one of the lowest rated defenses in the league. So, but Neighbors is here because of Washington, but he did have a crucial drop down the stretch that cost the Giants the game, along with the Giants losing their kicker that cost them the game. And Eckler and Robinson, do you believe that they're both every week starts? So Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson.
Brian Robinson is an every week start, at least as a RB2. He might be pushing towards RB1 territory, in my opinion, depending on how things shake out with his offense. Eckler, to me, is a flex play every week. So I'm not sold on him being locked into your first 2 running back spots, but flex play for sure.
So just for some context, as of today in half point PPR, Brian Robinson is RB12, which is an RB1, the back end of it, and Austin Eckler is RB29, which is 100% a flex play. So kind of interesting that they traded away Dotson, and now they're using Eckler a little bit more. Anything to add to the Giants and Commanders? This was a game of 2 non-playoff teams, I assume.
At this point, Ertz and the running backs look better than any of the wide receivers for the Commanders, and only Neighbors and Singletary looks good on the Giants side. So still no second wide receiver, no tight end emerged for the Giants yet. Granted, Daniel Jones is the quarterback, so we'll see how these 2 teams continue, and if Daniel Jones gets benched at some point, and if Jaden Daniels, if he, yeah, that almost tripped me up here. That did trip me up. We'll get better. So we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can hop over to the other New York team. And we both got this one right, where the Jets did beat the Titans. I think Levis Watch is still on, and I think he's on borrowed time. There was an exchange between him and the coach where he made another boneheaded play, and the coach was, "What the F are you doing?" That was bleeped out for all of our underage listeners. And so I think Will Levis will have till Thanksgiving to show that he can start playing mistake-free football. I don't know if he can do that, but the Jets side of the ball, Breece Hall and Braylon Allen got some run in this game. I think Braylon Allen scored 2 touchdowns. I think that Breece Hall was a little banged up in this game, and that's why Braylon Allen got so much play in this game. And how are we feeling after 2 weeks about Garrett Wilson, Alex?
I think it's just going to take time for Aaron Rodgers to get closer to 100%. Like he's starting to look better. Like, game 2 from game 1 is already better. Game 3 will probably be even better. So Garrett Wilson will get there and he will be useful, but he joins a couple other talented young wide receivers that haven't exactly had a good, like a really good week yet. And
Absolutely.
Brees Hall doesn't look as explosive as he was last year, and he is further removed from that injury. So you would think he'd be more explosive. Are you worried about Brees Hall with Braylon Allen stealing some goal line touches here and a touchdown?
So, yes and no. I don't think it's ever bad to have number 2 running back that can run in its place, but let's be clear that Brees Hall is dealing with a quadricep issue. So that's why Braylon Allen got so much run, and he's on the injury report this upcoming week for a quadricep injury.
Yay.
Everyone is injured. No one is healthy.
Everyone's injured. Everyone's playing like crap. We'll see. But speaking of injuries, Seahawks went to New England to play the Patriots and were without Kenneth Walker, who had an abdominal issue. And we both picked Seattle, and Seattle ended up winning right at the end. But a win's a win.
Yeah,
44 attempts for Geno. Is that perhaps too much?
that is way too much for Geno Smith. And that tells me that that's that new offensive coordinator that's calling this. But to Geno's defense and the offensive coordinator's defense, I believe that Zach Charbonnet struggled as the lead runner with Kenneth Walker out. I would have liked them to see them use McIntosh a little bit, but no other runner other than Charbonnet got any carries outside of Geno Smith. So, and he's on a running back. So, but on the inverse of positive or negativity, so something positive here. JSN Jackson Smith Njigba gets the call over Lockett with 16 targets. So of those 44 passes, 16 went to JSN.
So that was really nice. And DK Metcalf also had a 56-yard touchdown. So both those guys lit it up. Tyler Lockett only got 2 catches for 15 yards. I think he had another catch that was brought back from a penalty, but man, he did not do better than Jake Bobo on this offense this week.
I wonder if they're going to rotate weeks, like Lockett week, JSN week, Lockett week, JSN week. I wonder if they're going to be just annoying enough to mess with each
I
other.
can totally see that happening.
Yep. So
On the Patriots side, we had both Antonio Gibson and Ramondre Stevenson have good weeks.
yep.
So kind of a little bittersweet. Ramondre got the touchdown and he had a good week. But Antonio Gibson, 96 rushing yards, 103 total yards this week, whereas Ramondre just 90 yards on 23 touches. So, Jeff, is this going to be a 50-50 split going forward? Are they going to eat into each other?
No, I think they're trying to mask Brissett, and this is their way of masking Brissett right here by having more running back carries. And yeah, I think this is their way to mask him. And I think once they're eliminated, and I also think once the Panthers are eliminated, they go back to their young quarterbacks, or they go to their young quarterbacks and Drake May in this case. So that's my thought.
But my boy Hunter Henry, 8 catches on 12 targets for 109 yards. He might end up being a top 5 tight end the way things have gone the first 2 weeks.
I believe I started him against you in a league, if I'm not mistaken.
You might have. And that's the league that you spitefully took him in an auction draft just so I couldn't have him.
No, I only had Njoku. I needed to have a second tight end, and he was
You
all
have
that was
Hawkinson
left.
too. You have Hawkinson as well.
So in a week where Njoku nor Hawkinson play, what did you want me to do this week?
Well, you didn't know that when you drafted him. I
He
mean,
was
come on, Jeff.
insurance. Discount double check.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that's a league where I only have Fryermuth as my only viable tight end, and that's not good. Could have had Hunter Henry.
We will I'll trade him to you for a good price. As soon as I get Hawkinson and and Njoku back.
Give me 3 first round picks and Hunter Henry, and I'll give you Nico Collins. How about that?
On-air trades. On-air trades. I think we can hop to the other matchup here where the next one where the Niners played the Vikings, and it appears that the Vikings might have the Niners number in the regular season because they played them very tough last year. They beat them this year as the Vikings do beat the 49ers. Alex, you and I both got that one wrong. Debo set to miss some time, probably 2-ish weeks. So plan on some time without Debo. They've already lost CMC, so that offense is starting to look like a skeleton of itself really quickly. And on the Vikings side of the ball, it does appear that Ty Chandler is overtaking Aaron Jones in that backfield. Alex, what do you have to say about these two teams? It was a pretty good game.
Ty Chandler was more involved later in the game. I don't think he's taking over Aaron Jones. I think that they were trying to milk their lead and wear out the clock and run a little bit more. But I think both running backs are going to be involved basically every game. Ty Chandler to me offers no receiving upside. Aaron Jones does. I am surprised that the Vikings pulled off such a win like this, but the Vikings are a better team than people gave them credit for. I think that they are a middle of the pack team close to being a playoff contender, but I don't believe in Sam Darnold for a full season. So we'll see. But I expect the Niners to bounce back. What's going to be interesting is our week 3 podcast. So the next episode, Minnesota versus Houston. That's going to be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see where you go there. I think we're going to have a lot of differences in the next episode, so everyone stay tuned for that. And anything on this matchup before we can hop over to the Buccaneers at your Lions?
We can hop over to the next one.
So your Lions, what is going on with them, Alex?
Well, I thought this was a 50-50 matchup going into this, but what looks like is happening on the Lions side is the offensive line is banged up and not as good as it was over the season last year. It doesn't look like a top 5 offensive line. Despite that, I still think Goff is panicking at least a second and a half too early. Like he's sensing the rush before it actually gets to him a little too soon, getting rid of the ball. He's throwing it into the dirt. He's throwing it behind receivers. It looks sloppy. So I think that when Penei Sewell comes back, that should clear up some of it. But someone needs to tell Goff to just chill out. That if he just relaxes, he needs that Aaron Rodgers clip of him just saying "relax" and just be
Exactly.
calm. I think Baker's played pretty efficient and pretty good, but the Lions' defense is better than I think people give credit for, and he got sacked, I think, 5 or 6 times in this matchup. So much so that they almost had a record for a Detroit defensive player getting sacks in one game. So tough game,
Absolutely.
one score game, and I think these guys will see each other in the playoffs.
They could. They could. But people on X are talking up the Bucks and Dave Canales leaving, and it doesn't mean anything. But in reality, Baker went 12 for 19 in this game, 180 some yards. So it wasn't a great game for him. What it was a great game for is Chris Godwin. I think Chris Godwin is back in this league now that he's a slot receiver and a year removed from his ACL injury. But also, Dan Campbell took the blame for this loss. There was a few of his decisions. There was some really sloppy play call by Ben Johnson as well. There was a lot of wide receiver screens that they sniffed out towards the end, and they kept going back to that and Tampa Bay had that sniffed out towards the end of the game.
I mean, part of that is Todd Bowles is a savvy defensive play caller, so it's Ben Johnson versus Todd Bowles. Like you pointed out, the Dan Campbell thing was the end of the first half, the clock management and the penalty that led to the 10-second runoff, which ended the first half, when they should have been able to at least kick a field goal or get a touchdown. So there was some sloppiness. Detroit should have played better in this one, and I think Detroit is theoretically the better team, but they didn't play like it. And Tampa got a win on the road. They are 2-0, leading the division. So they and the Saints are battling out for the division lead in the NFC South.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who wins that, and we can't forget the Falcons still in there as well. So it'll be an interesting time in the NFC South. We never thought it would be this close of a division with this many decent teams.
No, it looks like it just might be only one bad team in that division this year.
Yep. And speaking of decent teams that we didn't think would be decent, the Arizona Cardinals beat the Los Angeles Rams, and our only difference this week, Alex, where you picked the Rams and I picked the Cardinals. So I will take the victory this week, and I will take a victory lap around the house.
Man, Cardinals got 5 sacks because of how bad the Rams' offensive line was. I don't think that the Cardinals' defense is that spectacular yet, but the Rams, with I think 6 or more offensive line injuries, are really hurting. A lot of pressure keeps getting put on Stafford to try to win the game, but no passing touchdowns, only one rushing touchdown. Not only do they have Puka Nacua hurt, but Cooper Kupp got hurt in this one. Couldn't really get much offense going. So Arizona just ran away with this, literally. Between James Conner and Kyler Murray, they were able to dominate the clock and move the chains and score. So Arizona, we were talking about this offline. I don't know if either one of us really believes Arizona can be a real playoff team, but what they can be is competitive every single week. They can tire out teams and surprise them. They could knock a team out of the playoffs potentially. I think they're borderline there. I just don't think that they'll actually make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think they'll be an interesting team, and they'll get their fair share of. They'll be in most of the games this year, and they'll get some upsets that we didn't have them getting before the season started. But the Rams are decimated right now. Kupp, as you mentioned, is out for an extended period of time. He's an IR candidate. So what are you going to do without Puka and Kupp? Nothing, really. Whittingham? You a big Whittingham guy?
Demarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson, apparently.
Yep. And then Whittingham they like there too. But so Kyler Murray finally starts targeting Marvin Harrison. What do you think about their connection? And this comes right after Kyler Murray said that it's not his job to get Marvin Harrison the ball, and then he made sure he got Marvin Harrison the ball. Those are always my favorite comments, the ones that are misleading, because gotcha.
I mean, he got 8 targets, got half of them, but that was for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he looks explosive. He looks like a number 1 receiver to me. Trey McBride is the number 2 there. Michael Wilson to me is the number 3. And Trey McBride had a good week, 6 receptions for 67 yards, and he recovered a fumble for a touchdown. So good for him.
It's been pointed out to me that some platforms don't record the individual player getting a recovery for a touchdown, only defenses. And yeah, someone asked me in one of my leagues for RSO that I run if I would make the adjustment for that, and I said no, because that's not the way that the stats are counted for RSO.
Yeah, that's one downside there.
Yep, I'm not going to just make exceptions because I'm going to have to pay attention to every game and every fumble recovered for a touchdown, and I'd be like, no.
Like, I sympathize with you, but that's too much work for me.
Yeah, exactly. I said reseeding playoff teams was too much work for me, so I was like, this is way too much work for me. All right, so this is a matchup where we believe that we will see this matchup again sometime this season, the Bengals at the Chiefs. Bengals looked much better in this game than they did in their week 1 matchup, so they are on the rise right now, but the Chiefs did win this matchup. We both got this one right. And the Bengals and Chiefs run games, we should discuss them a little bit. First, the Bengals. Moss and Chase Brown, they do not appear to be replacing Mixon very well right now. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on what they should do differently, but it's not working, whatever they're doing right now.
I think they should give the ball to Chase Brown more, less to Zach Moss. I don't even have Chase Brown in any of my leagues. I just think he's better than Zach Moss is.
And then the Chiefs run game with Pacheco out, you expect Carson Steele to get the first licks, or do you expect P. Ryan to be the beneficiary of this backfield?
I think it's gonna be a split. It's hard for me to say what, but I think Carson Steele is more of a 2-down thumper who can also catch, and I think P. Ryan is more of a 3rd-down player who can also run a little bit. So I think there is some versatility with both of them, but that would be the primary roles that I would see for them.
If you were telling our listeners who to start, who would you start? Half point PPR.
I wouldn't start either one of them.
That's
If
terrible.
if you absolutely have to, Steele would be the standard scoring, and P. Ryan would be the PPR.
All right. So I have to say it. Bengals tight end. Do you think they finally have a tight end that we can start in this league?
Mike Gesicki has been targeted quite a lot the first 2 weeks, and you and I both like Mike Gesicki. I don't know what to make of it, honestly. Like, I want to believe in Mike, and I think he has to be rostered in deep leagues or teams that need a tight end. I think Mike Gesicki could be it. So I think he's worth a pickup. I don't know if I believe it yet, but he's worth a pickup.
Okay, I can live with that. But yeah, I don't really have much else to say about this game. I do believe we'll see them play again in the postseason. They're both very good teams, and the Bengals very historically get off to a very slow start in September. And already can see the improvements from week 1 to week 2 with the Bengals. So they are on the streak to start righting that ship. I don't think the Steelers are going to be the division leaders at the end of the year for that division. Speaking of the Steelers, the Steelers and the Broncos are our next matchup. We both picked Pittsburgh. We both won. How do you feel that Knicks and Sean Payton have done to start off the year?
I think Knicks has been okay. Definitely not as exciting as his preseason games were, but he's also played two pretty tough defenses right out the gate, and I think the next week probably isn't going to do them any favors either. It's hard to judge because the supporting cast is so terrible. I don't think Javonte Williams has been very good this year. I think the offensive line has not been as good as we thought they would be, or at least I thought they would be. And literally, your best option is Cortland Sutton, who's better served to be a wide receiver 2 than the wide receiver 1 for your team. So it's not like they have much to work with. And I don't think that Knicks has been as awful as people think he is.
Yeah, I think it's ill advised to have him throw 35 times against the Steelers. Steelers are known for their good defense. So I start to question some of the play calling and the. When do we start questioning Sean Payton? Is my question here.
Well, it's hard to question him. Like, he didn't build the roster the way that it is. He inherited the roster, and he's trying to trim the fat before he can add to it. But I will say, Jeff, 35 times is less than 42 times the week before. So he's trending in the right direction with Bo Nix's throws.
So first he threw for 6 touchdowns and only 5 touchdowns in passing attempts. So he dropped a touchdown.
No, he hasn't dropped a touchdown. He didn't have a touchdown week 1. So
6
he went
touchdowns
from
is 42 points. 5 touchdowns is 35 points.
I did not register that at
It
all,
was
Jeff.
a math joke.
Well, nobody
Better than
likes nerds.
yeah,
Nobody
better
likes
than a
nerds.
geography. Yeah, still better than a geography joke where you had to be there.
You just had to be there.
Yep,
That's
it's a
the joke.
geography joke.
Yep. Well,
Has Fields done enough to remain starter?
I think so, in my opinion.
Okay.
I don't necessarily I don't necessarily think Russell Wilson would have been any better, to be honest with you. So Fields has
Okay.
been good enough, and he at least has thrown touchdowns, unlike Kenny Pickett. So he's already an improvement there. And there's a 50-yard George Pickens touchdown that was called back because of a penalty, and Fields could have had a bigger day, and George Pickens could have had a big day.
How
So
many
it's
touchdowns has Justin Fields thrown this year?
how many fields has Justin Fields thrown on the field this year?
How
I'm
much
sure
wood
you can
could a
make that a
woodchuck
tongue
chuck?
twister.
A woodchuck could
Yeah.
chuck wood.
So far, the one.
Yeah, I know. So he is on the Kenny Pickett
I
line.
don't know. Started with 0, moved on to 1. Next week is 2. Then it's 3. Next thing you know, it's going to be 17, 16. But
You better start Fields that week.
if any fantasy player did that, that would be insane.
We're down to our last 2 prime time games, and the Bears at the Texans. Alex, the Texans let the Bears hang around in this matchup, but it also feels like Caleb Williams is over his skis in this matchup, and that he may not be ready to be winning NFL quarterback just yet. But we both picked Houston in this matchup, and Houston did win. How do you feel about the Texans right now, and how do you feel about your boy Nico?
So, several things to talk about, and I'll just address the Bears and Caleb Williams aspect first. Despite all the criticisms that I have with Caleb Williams, And I still see that in this game, the same criticisms. That interior offensive line is terrible, and the Texans exposed it. With Caleb, he needs to learn how to get the ball out of his hands quickly and not try to extend the play every time. This isn't college. He's not one of the faster guys on the field anymore. Everyone is as fast as he is on that defense. So he's going to get caught. And I honestly think that there's still potential for him to improve as long as they can address that. Will they address it? I don't know. They need to fix that interior line soon. For the Texan side, I thought the defense looked really good. They swarmed a lot. I think I told you I thought the Texans were going to be a top 7 defense this year, and I think that they're right there. Nico Collins has solidified himself in my mind as the number 1 option there. He has more targets than anybody else. He is the most explosive player on this team. I think he's going to continue to be the wide receiver 1 the rest of the year, and I think he's in the top 8 of wide receivers so far, 2 weeks in, something like that. Joe Mixon got hurt in this one on one of those hip drop tackles that didn't get called. I'm curious if he's going to be able to play next week in what is probably a high ankle sprain, so he might be able to play through it, but he might miss a week. So look for Cam Akers or Damian Pierce or both to get used this next week.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. But anything else on the Texans or the Bears before we move on? I think the Bears are going to win like 4 or 5 games this year.
The Bears defense is going to keep them close in most matchups because the Bears defense did a good job against the Texans.
Yeah, they did. They did the first 2 weeks, actually, so they'll keep them in some games, which we'll get to week 3 in a little bit. Can't believe we already have 2 weeks in the book. That is very interesting that it's went this fast, but we're on the Monday night matchup where we had the Falcons at the Eagles. This was easily the game of the week, and Cousins wins in primetime, which causes Alex and I to lose our last game of the week. Alex, any notes from this game? I mean, it was a pretty good game. It was a great game at the end.
Kirk Cousins still looked a little shaky in the first quarter, and each quarter he looked better and better. And that last 2-minute drive, he looked really good. I'm hoping that he's settling in this new offense and that there's more to come. Mooney looked really good in this game, and I think he'll be usable in fantasy. If he's on the waiver wire, pick him up. If he's on your roster, you might be able to start him, especially with some of these wide receiver injuries that have been happening out here. I think Bijan Robinson, I wouldn't panic on him or Saquon if you were. I'm hoping that A.J. Brown will be back soon because I think if A.J. Brown was healthy for this game, I think Philly still would have won. I wouldn't panic on Philly. I think both these teams are probably going to be playoff teams.
That'll be fun, and I think Philly did a bunch of things to lose the game. It wasn't just the Barkley drop, so I know Barkley's going to take this very hard, but yeah, I probably wouldn't take it super hard.
Okay.
It happens. Neighbors had one earlier too, so. But that's it for this matchup too that I have.
That has been another episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you all for downloading and listening to this episode, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment and share the show. Every little bit helps.
You can find us on all podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy and with our handle at N2E Fantasy on all social media platforms. Please join our community and give us a follow. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and remember, it's truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again.
Bye, everybody.